discussing performance management. This is our second lecture on performance management, and last time we were discussing pitfalls in the whole system of performance management. Quickly I'll give you some more idea about that. So, first we have the recap of pitfalls and problems of performance appraisals. This we have already discussed last time. So, very quickly I'll just look through that and then we move on. So, the shifting standards, different rated patterns, central tendency, first impression, latest behavior, halo effect. This we had not discussed last time. When the person who is doing the appraisal, he might have some ideas about the positive qualities of the person, and this might affect the evaluation process. So, we might have a positive kind of a result in terms of appraisal. Similarly, a person might have negative idea about certain qualities of the individual, and which may be called as the horn effect. And so, in either of these two situations, some kind of a bias is creeping in. So, when the rater or the person who is evaluating is doing this job, he has to do a very responsible job. Stereotyping, spillover effects, work culture, which we had not discussed last time in so much, is an important, and it has to be so conducive to give and receive proper feedback. Lack of appreciation about the philosophy and benefits of performance feedback, lack of willingness of supervisor and the top management in adopting the process, fears and appreciations about the use of performance feedback outcomes. We have discussed these in our last time. Confidentiality in the existing system, interference by trade unions in case of workers. Trade unions are important bodies, those who might make some impact on the performance appraisal system, because they might sometimes feel that it is not a fair performance appraisal, and so this has to be taken care of. Lack of proper system and procedure. In fact, when we are going to talk about documentation, then this issue will come again, and in fact, or we should look into that documentation process, that the proper system and procedure has to be followed. Lack of accountability, lack of clarity on role, goal and job demands, no direct linkage with performance or performance feedback system with reward and punishment, because as we have understood in the beginning of this course, that when we are doing performance is not just in isolation. It has to be understood as some outcome and some action that we have to take, which may be in terms of any kind of a reward or punishment, because the process has to go on. So the performance appraisal also we can extend that to the training programs, the HRD programs, and also the some kind of job design strategies and so on. So, the lack of skill in performance analysis and giving feedback. So, again and again we are talking about giving feedback, because that is an important component of performance management system. Constraints of time availability, this may be there in some cases when we are trying to do the performance appraisal, but we are doing it so quickly because of shortage of time, and sometimes we may not do so much justice, or it may not be so scientific in terms of performance appraisal. Then with this we have seen again and again in terms of so many other factors which we have discussed. So, we can sort of summarize that as a personal bias and subjectivity which the person who is doing your appraisal might have. Then non-uniformity in the criterion of the performance analysis. For some group you are taking some 1, 2, 3 aspects, for other groups you are taking 5, 6, 7 aspects or something of that kind. Then how do you compare? It becomes very difficult. Then lack of trust and openness in people, and some sort of becoming conservativeness, heterogeneous interests. You understand, heterogeneous interests, which is different against the homogeneous. Then low motivation, target achievement oriented system, non-recognition of the efforts of subordinate development, and these were some of the factors which are actually affecting the overall performance appraisal system. That is why we call them as the pitfalls and problems in the performance appraisal system. So, the manager who is in charge of this has to take care of this and design a system and practice a system in which we can overcome these pitfalls. So, this brings us to the employee appraisal system, few other aspects. Let us see rating by supervisors. Traditionally, when we are looking at performance appraisal system, supervisors are the first choice for rating your performance or anybody's performance for that matter. So, in this system, supervisors appraise the performance of subordinates without involving the rater, the latter. That means there is a supervisor and there is a person who has to be appraised. So, the supervisor is trying to do the rating, and this latter person, or who is the person whose performance has to be rated, he is kept in aside. In this process what happens, whatever he wants to say, he keeps everything confidential to himself and not involving this person. So, this is used most commonly in the government organizations, also in our own organizations in our country. The various methods used under this are the ranking method, ranking the first person, the second person, the third person, paired comparison. Okay, we have to compare the two particular persons, graphic rating scale methods. We can go little scientific and have the graphic rating method. Forced choice list, there is a forced choice, and out of that you have to select, okay, this. Then critical incident, in which the person is put under a particular critical situation, and then the person is asked to perform, and we look at the performance at that time. Then forced distribution method, we have the forced distribution of people for various kinds of jobs. Then we come to the feedback on the performance appraisal information. In this system, the appraisee is informed about the strong and weak points given to him and the opportunity to defend himself in terms of some kind of a weakness or some constraints or whatever he has overcome. This system may lead to greater satisfaction, because people feel that I am involved, I am being asked about my difficulties and so on, and this will increase to greater satisfaction, higher work performance due to this element of participative approach, which we have already discussed earlier. So, the field review technique is there. In this technique, the appraiser goes to the field. Field may be shop floor, or field may be for a teacher it may be the classroom situation, or any other field where the person is working, lab person is working in the lab. So, and obtains information about the work performance of the employees by the way of questioning that said individual to his peer groups, and he wants to or supervisors, and he wants to find out about him, and the information received about how he is performing. This helps the appraiser in defining the profile of the employee. Then rating by self, this has become very popular these days, and in fact this is a new, I will say, concept that has been integrated into the whole performance appraisal system. Earlier we were never giving this opportunity to people, but now most of the organizations all over the globe, they also give self rating opportunity to people. And in this method, the employee appraisal is done independently at 3 levels: at the level of employee, at the level of peer group, and at the level of superiors. And the HRD department analyzes 3 appraisal reports and then draws the profile, okay, based on these common aspects. So, we can really, if that is based on some kind of a Likert scale, then we can draw a matrix which will actually help us in the performance appraisal system. When in the later part of our discussion, we will also present to you some case studies, and where we will be talking to you about this performance appraisal system and how ratings could be used for performance appraisal. Then a very new concept that has been introduced in the whole system of performance appraisal is 360-degree performance appraisal system. And 360-degree, can you guess 360? Okay. You have 180, 45, 180, 360. Can you guess? I am sure you are able to guess. What could be the meaning of 360 performance appraisal system? Obviously, this new concept of performance appraisal, where feedback is collected from all around: the employees, the supervisor, the subordinates, the peer group, the customer, and the evaluation is done in a very comprehensive way in terms of employees' skills, abilities, styles, job related competencies, and it has certain advantages. Now, we will see what are the advantages. It gives us higher validity and reliability of the evaluation. Self evaluation by employees gets this is better in comparison to perception of others, then helps in maximizing employee potential to face certain challenges. Do you understand the validity and reliability concepts? I am sure most of you do, but let me just give you an idea. Whenever we are trying to measure something, it must have these two we can say scientific characteristics. Any measure that we are using must be reliable and must be valid. And if we are using a reliability concept, any scale that you are using, if you are talking about reliability, that means that scale must measure the same thing again and again. Here we are talking about performance appraisal, which is again a measurement. It may not physically, it is not a not a measuring scale like that or any measuring equipment like that, but it is a measurement tool in terms of the HR, and we have to look at the reliability of this measurement tool. So, if we are using this tool again and again, then do we get the same or at least the similar very close results? Then it is a reliable tool. And if you are using this tool, another concept is validity, whether this tool is measuring what it ought to measure. So, if you have a measurement tool, for example, this pen you have, and this is maybe whatever inches it about, say whatever 5 inches or centimeters, okay, so many centimeters, okay, and if it is supposed to measure that, okay, if it is measuring that by an external standard, this is a valid measure, because it is reliable anyway. Every time I use this, it gives me the same result. Are you getting the difference between the two? So, if a measurement tool is valid, it has to be reliable. So, here we are using these scientific terms also for performance measurement, okay, that every measure must be reliable as well as valid. I think the better example would be a watch. What is the time in your watch? After every 60 minutes your watch will say 1 hour has gone, it is a reliable watch. But whether it is a valid watch, it will be a valid watch if it gives us the Indian Standard Time. So, after 60 minutes it gives me 1 hour has gone, but if it gives me Indian Standard Time, then it is a valid watch and it is valid, so it is also reliable. I am getting the what meaning and analogy I am trying to present here. So, any kind of a measurement that we are following, also in the human sciences, we have to see that the measures are reliable and valid. And when we are looking at 360-degree appraisal, the results are dependable, because normally we find that these appraisals are valid and reliable. Because the concepts are important, I thought I will devote little more time than many other concepts. Some are there and one can just understand, but this concept one has to understand very carefully. So, we move on to understand, okay, so this helps in maximizing the employee potential to face the challenges, because you are getting the information and very valid genuine feedback you are getting. From here we will come to a very special concept of performance management, that is competence. In the recent years we have been talking about competency mapping as an important concept in performance management, because unless we have the competency mapping for each individual, we will not be able to really take many sort of actions or decisions about the individual. So, first we will look at what is competence, and then we move on to competency mapping. Competence means a skill, while competency perhaps is a behavior. Based on this skill, you have some behavior that you are presenting. One describes what people can do, while the other one focuses on how they do it. Is it clear? So, we are making this a little bit distinction between the two. So, competencies refer to the range of skills which are satisfactorily performed, while the competencies competence and competencies refer to behaviors adopted in the competent performance. competency has been defined as the characteristics of managers, okay, those who lead to the demonstration of skills and abilities which result in effective performance within an occupational area. It also embodies the capacity to transfer skills and abilities from one to another. An underlying characteristic of a person which results in effective and or superior performance on the job, that is also defined as the competency. This is a definition by Clem. Competency also refers to a cluster of related knowledge, skills and attitudes that affect a major part of one's job. You understand, a role or a responsibility. We have seen earlier that people might play some roles at the place of work, and you are playing at the moment the role of a student, and you will become a manager, you will start playing role of a manager, and perhaps a manager who has to do performance appraisal. Okay. So, you have also the responsibility while playing that role. And this correlates with this playing of these roles and responsibilities. These correlate with the performance of at the job that could be measured against well accepted standards and that could be improved via training and development. So, competency has been defined as an underlying characteristic of an individual that could be related to criterion referenced effective and the superior performance in the job situation. Some of the competency characteristics: motives. There are number of competency characteristics. Let us see one by one. Motives: the things a person consistently thinks about or wants and that which causes action. Motives and drives direct and select behavior towards certain action or goals and away from others. Traits. You must have heard the word traits. Perhaps in our earlier discussion we were talking about traits, the personality traits. So, here we are talking about the traits, physical characteristics and consistent responses to situations and information. Traits, overall traits of the individual. Self concept, a person's attitude, values or self image. Have you understood the meaning of self concept? The interesting term. When you are looking at yourself, in the early in the morning in the mirror, what do? You are trying to evaluate your self concept. And in fact, the looking glass theory says that a person, the society perhaps is the looking glass for you, and you keep evaluating yourself in that mirror of society, and so you develop your self concept. Isn't that very interesting? So, self concept has become very important, and that is one of the important perhaps factors. So, it's basically the self image. How do you see yourself? But where do you see? In the mirror of society. Knowledge, that is the information a person has in specific content areas. Skill, the ability to perform a certain physical or mental task. So, now we come to a specific view of possible competencies, and skills. And we have some more information. Maybe I can I'll share with you one aspect here, that in the preparation of the performance management and the competency management, the two perhaps the publications which are very important. This about competency management is by Seema Sanghi, and the other one also, well, many others have written. The other one also in that's about the performance management. That's also important. So, Seema Sanghi's book is very important, in this particular context. So, a view of personal competencies, when we see, this refers to the skill which is intelligence, creativity, emotional intelligence and factors like that, self concept, traits and motives, and attitudes, values, knowledge and performance. So, these are some of the possible ways, and the competencies, what is observable, we can, and a few may be observable, few may be hidden. So, the hidden are the traits, motives, self concept, values, creativity and intelligence, whereas visible may be attitudes, emotions, intelligence, skill, knowledge, performance. So, the types of competencies are the threshold competencies and differentiating competencies. Then when we look at the threshold competencies, let us see what are the threshold competencies. These are the competencies which are which have essential characteristics such as which are needed for the job, and minimally effective, but this does not really distinguish the superiors from the average performers. Threshold, you understand, okay? That threshold where it may be sometimes that threshold may be there, it may be difficult for you to really find out the person where he or she is, okay, that kind of thing. Whereas there are competencies where you can really have the differentiating sort of parameters, and these could distinguish supervisors from the average performers. And so, the competency models, there are number of competency models, and these may be needed because if you understand about the competency model, then hiring the best available people. In fact, you would recollect that in our chapter on the selection, recruitment and training, we were talking about selecting people, and in the selection we have talked about number of factors and number of methods of selecting people. So, the competency management also becomes very important, because once you have these parameters with you, you may be in a better position to select people, the right person for the right kind of a job. So, we move on, hiring the best available person, best people, productivity maximization, enhancing 360-degree feedback process, adapting to change, aligning behavior with organizational strategies and values. And so, there are number of models which are explaining the competency process, and of course, there are number of models that we have in the literature. We are just discussing the job competence assessment model, modified job competence assessment method, generic model, customized generic models, flexible job competency model, systems method, accelerated competency system methods, all these. So, what we have seen, these are number of models which various authors have given and published in many books related to competency. We are not getting into these details right now, maybe some other time. So, the issues related to competency mapping are basically related to some of the discussion that we have already had. So, let us see, we will organize some of those issues into the understanding of competency mapping. So, when you want to do competency mapping, we have to make sure, is the organization serious about it? What is the goal, quality or excellence? Is the development method continuous or periodic? Is the assessment a continuous process or is it a one time endeavor? See, in some cases, some organizations, they have a continuous assessment process which goes on after a particular time, and for some people it may be either at the end of the year or sometimes not even end of the year. It may be when the next promotion perhaps comes. So what's the practice in a particular organization? Then, are competencies reflecting current activities or future activities? We have to make sure and answer this question. What should be the time frame for the project, any project or any work performance that has been given to an individual? How will the determinants of the success be measured? How do you, so we have to first design that, what will be expected out of this at the end of completion of this project? What are the desired outcomes? Who is the owner of the process? Who all will be targeted? Who all will be involved in this development? We are talking about the whole competency mapping process and what are the things that we have to look into, and then only we can design on what competency mapping we are going to do. So, who will be assessed by whom? How to validate the assessment? How will the competency project be communicated to the employees? And in this context, well, one model that I may like to discuss is the Lancaster model of managerial competencies, which is a universal management competency framework, and most of the books related to the competency as a concept in competency mapping, perhaps they have presented the Lancaster model, and we will see that what are the aspects that the model has given to us. The model has 11 qualities separated into 3 groups which represent 3 different levels. Are you getting? 3 groups into 3 separate levels, and these are the performance appraisal could be informal and formal. Is it possible to have informal performance appraisal? Yes or no? See, One thing is formal performance appraisal. You can have the performer and people will tick mark that okay, you stand here, something of that kind. And in informal performance appraisal, you do not have a standard questionnaire or any rating scale, but you are just asking people about that particular individual. And you may find that sometimes even informal appraisal gives you lot of information about the individual. And so, maybe you combine the both or you may use either of these two. So, the informal performance appraisal system is a continuous process of feeding back to the subordinates information about how well they are doing with the work in the organization, and it is conducted on day-to-day basis, isn't that? You may not be aware of it, but actually your informal performance appraisal is going on all the time. And the formal performance appraisal system usually occurs annually on a formalized basis and involves some kind of an appraiser down together and then finding answer to some of the questions, which could be as follows: what performance was set out to be achieved during the period? Has this been achieved? What has been the shortfall or what were the constants? What are we going to do now? How do we know that we have done it? What are the feedback that could be expected? What assistance can be expected to improve performance? What reward and opportunities are likely to follow? Performance appraisal has been used for basically three purposes: remedial, maintenance and development. So, when we are looking at remedial, you understand, any kind of if counseling is needed, any kind of a training is needed. So, through the performance appraisal perhaps we can do that, and then the maintenance and then the development of the individual as well as for the organization. Performance appraisal is at the individual level, but overall if we find that the performance management and development is not that satisfactory, then perhaps some organization development strategy, overall development strategy also we may follow. In our next discussion, we are going to have an idea about what is the meaning of organization development and how do we go about it in our next discussion. So, the approaches to performance appraisal system, the just to again there may be certain repetitions and when we are teaching performance management, certain ideas may have been given in different forms, but that will make you understand it better. So, the elements, on the one hand we have written, one side we have written elements and what are the traditional approaches on the other side. So, the elements you can see that we are talking about the purpose. It could be organizational, legal and some kind of a fragmented. Then the appraiser, supervisor, manager, we have discussed some of these earlier. Role of appraisee, this was in the earlier times, this was a passive role, okay, as against today is an active role. and the recipient's role in the earlier traditional time, or even today the organizations using the traditional method of performance management. For them the parameters like the traditional rules, they will and they will actually apply the traditional approaches, the organizational leader, the supervisor. The role of appraisee again is passive and recipient. Then the measurement, in the traditional way they are subjective and concerned with validity, and the timing is the periodic, fixed and administratively drawn. We are talking about the traditional approaches to performance management. Now, coming to the against the traditional approaches, we have the high involvement approaches, in which you can see that the purpose is developmental and integrative. The appraiser is the appraisee, the co-worker and others. The rater, the role of the appraisee is active participant. Then the measurement is objective as well as subjective, we have seen that. And the timing is, it is a dynamic activity, okay, and it is dynamic, timely, employee and work driven. So, not necessarily at the end of the year, okay, it goes on and at the end of a certain activity, perhaps so the key term we can say that it is a very dynamic kind of a appraisal system. So, can you see now the difference between the traditionally followed performance management system and the high involvement based management system, in which everyone becomes a participant in the whole process. So, designing this performance appraisal systems, that what we have discussed so far, becomes very important for any organization. Identification of key performance areas and setting objectives in the beginning of the year by the appraisee and the appraiser, it becomes very important. Then the identification of the attributes to be shown by all managers irrespective of whatever levels that they might have. Self appraisal, performance analysis to identify factors facilitating and hindering performance and what kind of corrective measures or actions we might take. Then the identification of training needs and preparation of development plans. Then so the introduction of performance appraisal system should have been planned in the development stage, and the main steps to train everyone in the performance appraisal in office and operation to monitor and evaluate how the system is working out in practice. So, performance appraisal system, we cannot just let it go as a very simple issue in the overall performance management, and in fact in the whole process of managing itself, because once we are employing people, we want certain goals to be achieved, which in turn will become organizational input to the organizational performance, we can say. So it becomes extremely important that we design the system very carefully. And so the relevance of training in performance appraisal system again becomes very important, because once we have got the results, so what do we do? Okay, you do not give promotion to someone, or you do not give rewards to someone, but that is not enough, because we need to improve the lot of people working with our organization, and so training becomes inevitable. And so both appraiser and the appraisee need guidance and training in the upgradation of the performance agreements and plans, and the conduct performance review and completion of the review forms. Training can be provided by formal courses or workshops, and the training modules could be designed which may consist of some of the well, I think getting into a bit details of how to design this. So, very quickly I will skip through all this. Let us see the introduction to in a training program schedule, introduction to performance appraisal system, defining the key tasks and setting the objectives, working with the attributes and the competence, preparing performance and development plans, conducting appraisal discussions, ratings, providing feedback, coaching and counseling. Okay. These were some of the aspects. So, this brings us to the issue that whether performance and potential are the same, are these interchangeable, are they synonyms, are they synonymous to each other? What do you think? Performance appraisal, let us see whether they differ or are they the same. Performance appraisal is designed to look backwards in order to look forward. The best prediction of potential using performance appraisal as the basis is made when the next job is quite similar to the previous one. Performance is the resultant behavior of the subordinates on the task which can be observed and evaluated. Potential, on the other hand, refers to the employee's abilities to fit into the future roles. Have you seen that performance appraisal and the potential of the individual, these are interrelated yet different. So, we have to see the specialities of these two aspects, say the potential that the individual has and then how his performance gets reflected because of so many reasons, and we have seen earlier in some of our lectures that motivation might play a greater role. So, one may have potential, but the performance may be poor because there is a lack of motivation. So, in fact, this reminds me that one of the books that I wrote about maybe you may be interested in this. This is on the book is, maybe you can see this, the book is on the management and job performance. So, the whole idea that is given in this book is about that how the potential of the person that affects performance and how motivation becomes an important factor in the whole idea of performance management. So, from here we move on to the benefits of performance appraisal for the appraisee. better understanding his role in the organization and what is expected and what needs to be done to meet these expectations, is not that? So, we have to understand that clear understanding of these strengths and weaknesses of performance appraisal system, so as to develop himself into a better performance in future. Increased motivation, job satisfaction and job esteem. This was a study and in fact, the analysis which was published in this particular book. Since that is my book, I thought I will show that to you. Then opportunity to discuss work problems and how they can overcome this. Then opportunity to discuss aspirations and guidance, support or training needed to fulfill these aspirations. Improved working relationships with supervisors. And from here we move on to the process of performance appraisal. Let us see now. I am sure that with the discussion that we have had in more than 1.5 hours now, you have now fairly good idea about what is performance appraisal system. But let me repeat and perhaps put that in the final perspective. Select performance appraisal is for it selects people, and so they select performance factors based on job description to be evaluated and set as a standards to be achieved. So, what should we do? So, I am just saying that once again, maybe in different words. Set the performance review period, measure actual performance, compare performance with set standards and rate it with a suitable scale, communicate the rating to the person to be appraised, use the performance appraisal for desired purposes. And so, the benefits of performance appraisal for organization management are as follows. Any questions you have? Yes, in most of the organizations in India, they are looking at the performance appraisal system, in fact, in very seriously now, because we have to achieve the competitive advantage and we can't just let it go as a very casual process, and also the process which has any bias. Okay. So, we have to really identify people, those who are the good performers. So, the benefits of performance appraisal, as we see, the identification of performers and non-performance and their development towards better performance. In fact, the non-performers cannot really be in or can survive in today's competitive world. So, one has to be a performer, maybe an average performer, good performer, best performer or whatever. So, the opportunity to prepare employees for assuming higher responsibilities, opportunity to improve communication between employees and management, identification of training and development needs, generation of ideas for improvements. Performance management looks at a number of factors such as competency, organizational culture and performance appraisal system, and these factors may depend on a number of factors such as emotional makeup of the managers, his or her personality, emotional intelligence, perceived stress all these factors become very important, and this in turn may be related to his background and culture of the organization. So, from here we have to now see that what are the performance management issues that we will take up, and in this continuation I will discuss with you the next part, the next lecture. I will discuss with you some of the issues which will relate to the studies which we have conducted on performance management in some of the Indian industries. So, we move on to the next lecture, and there you will get to know that what are the aspects of performance management when we have looked at the Indian industries.